I am here today with Jon-Mikel Valudes. Jon-Mikel is the drummer for Valerian Sun. Valerian Sun is an accomplished three-piece alternative hard rock band. That's what we're going to call you today, so far anyway.
I'll take it.
Jon-Mikel is a founding member of the bands From Ashes to New and Dead Eyes as well. Between Spotify and YouTube, he has performed on more than 50 million streams. That's quite a bit in a few years. In 2021, Valerian Sun released their debut single, All at Once, and has more recently released a single called The Burnout, along with a video. And it's a great one, too. It's great to have you here, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be speaking with you. For sure.
Alternative hard rock band. You good with that?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you learn, the longer you play music and you're releasing music to the public, that I think everybody's like, well, we kind of sound like this band and but we don't want to compare ourselves. But inevitably, it's one of the easiest ways for people to understand your sound and its perspective as well, so
Yeah.
We'll take music's all about, everybody listens to it differently. So alternative rock, whatever the other subgenres are,
Right.
it's
There's a lot of them these days, man.
oh yeah. And there's no wrong answer,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, it's music, and I love to think of it like that. And, listening, you got two tracks out there, All at Once and The Burnout. And they're pretty different. All at Once, I know you get the Muse thing a lot. And I did hear that, which I thought was a great thing. And The Burnout is more of a up-tempo, upbeat, more of a major scale than a minor scale kind of thing. It's a really bright, fresh sound, a lot different. How do you describe Valerian Sun music? And is it all going to be like that? Is it all going to be different? Have you written more?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The interesting, truthful answer to that is the theme of this band is that we look at music like a language, and we all genuinely have. And I know we've all known each other in passing throughout the years and have talked about this. And with this project, we're really being intentional with it. So like, we didn't know the first round of studio dates, we recorded All at Once and another song that hasn't been released. And those were all written from scratch. And then the second time, we didn't know what we were going to be doing until, as we're writing, because everything's kind of instinctual. So next time we go into the studio, I think there is, to be honest, the common theme that, if we're following Annie, is that we don't want to create one specific, like, completely targeted sound. So then we're pigeonholed in the future and we can only write in this little corner,
Right. Yeah. And you're doing that with these two songs, that's for sure. Different, very different, but still cohesive. I think you could put these side by side on a record and be okay. Which is really different, it's odd to see something like that, because they are quite different, but they still sound like you.
That's a breath of fresh air to hear from the outside, because that's what we were hoping for.
Yeah, and I definitely get that for sure. How does this go from a country project to a rock thing? I've heard you started this as a country thing.
I did. This whole thing, like I said, has been pretty organic and just naturally happened. But initially, I was an account manager for a construction company, and I managed 3 territories in Pennsylvania. So I'm Job-Mikel right now, J-O-B. And then when I'm, not, I'm Jon-Mikel, but my friends kid about that. But so I was doing the traditional work thing, and I love sales and business. And then I was approached by a country artist locally who was a really raw talent, super talented, just has never been in a structured, organization or an organized band or music project. So I took him on, and the long story short of that is I was developing him, and took him to see like Luke, or I forget, it was Jason Aldean or something to get him excited. And he got pretty overwhelmed by it, understandably, because we've all been there before.
Yep.
And he ended up just saying, this isn't really the path that I want to go down. I respected it, but I already had the studio dates booked for this country artist like a month following that. So I have no vocalist, and I have, at that time, it's not really a band or a team. It's just me and the guitarist. And then I reached out to James Walpert, and immediately he's like, yeah, man, like I'm totally in. So we're like, we have a month until we go into the studio. We can just like try to write in 2 weeks, or we can just go in and just be intentional. So from Country Project, I mean, we were writing like top 40 modern, poppy country stuff. And yeah, it's pretty bizarre. I mean, that shift is just, it's a 180.
Yeah, I mean, are we gonna get that eventually? Some of that, will you release that and put it side by side with these 2 tracks?
I don't know. Not with Valerian Sun. I might do something on the side, but everybody says, you ask them, I'm sure you've noticed this as well, Scott, but they'll say, hey, what kind of music do you listen to? And you get one of 2 answers. One is usually I listen to everything. And then the other is I listen to everything but country. But I listen to literally everything. I always have. Like I'll listen to Victor Wooten or James Farm, jazz fusion, all of that stuff, and then I'll listen to heavy metal, rap. I mean, I'm all over the place. Country I love. So I mean, you have all of these things fit into the realm, which is incredible, that you have 3 or 4 different kind of personalities, and an exponential amount of different genres and subgenres that those 3 or 4 personalities gravitate towards.
It's cool. I love it, because I am one of those everything guys, and you'll find it all in here. And it's it fulfills me as a person. So I would imagine it does the same for you as a musician. You get different angles and sounds and the ambiance of all the different genres. It's got to help with your playing too.
What do you listen to? What like right now is in rotation for you?
There's a band called Broken Love. New band, kind of Dirty Honey, kind of rock, classic rock, bluesy, funky thing. That's kind of in my wheelhouse. That I grew up in the 70s classic rock. And 80s was my time. I have 2 older brothers, so and I really got into all that. And the hard rock thing is in my wheelhouse. But I ventured out into jazz fusion for Jon-Mikel Valudes is my favorite drummer, for example. So Mahavishnu Orchestra, things like that, and does world music, Salif Keita. There's so many different kinds of things that go into my enjoyment of music and sound. So, I love, the yacht rock stuff is, the adult yacht contemporary stuff. I love that stuff.
I do too. Pleasure. It's weird. It's weird. I mean, people will call you eclectic, I guess is the nice way to put it, but it's interesting, like Afro-Cuban, type of stuff, and all of the things that people don't, I mean, I hate to say people in general, but like majority, I feel like don't really listen to. We have, to be honest, like, so Trey, he won the biggest guitar competition in the world in 2006. He's like 40 years old. He's 10 years older than us. And we all together, not to toot our horn, but I mean, that's why we wanted to challenge the fluidity of the concept of music being a language. And really, we're in this, mainstream market, mainstream rock, let's just call it. And we love that stuff. But I think part of it is like, we have a lot of linear influences that I think could be really interesting to add into that sector, like hair metal, like Trey, his favorite guitarist is Steve Vai, and he loves Steve Vai.
Yeah.
He actually went to Steve Vai's house years ago and ate Thai food after the competition and stuff. So
Uh,
we were in the studio the first time, just real long story short. And I was pretty strict about like, all right, guys, like we don't want to get too crazy. We don't want to write music that we would write in the basement. You know what I mean? Hate to
right.
say it, but we didn't want to do that. But we want it to be authentic and we want people to be able to relate to it. So I told Trey, don't like shred crazy. You know, it's going to go over people's heads. It goes over my head sometime and all of our heads.
Right.
But we kind of kept them in a cage. And then the second time, I'm like, you know what? That's you. Like you have to do it. So even like the Burnout, like you can probably tell there's a lot of 80s rock, like Van Halen, you know,
Yep.
80s hair metal influence in that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. You know, and I look at Trey, you know, voted top 10 guitarist in the world by Guitar Player magazine, in 2006 is what you're
Yeah.
referring to. And that's huge. He's appeared in over 200 publications. The guy is you know, he's virtuoso type accomplished guitar player. And I wanted to ask you about that. You know, a lot of newer music uh doesn't lend itself to the guitar solo anymore. You know, even the harder rock bands that, you know, came up from, you know, the guitar solo tradition are putting that to the side. You know, there's really not an interest in the shredding guitar solo anymore.
Yeah.
um you got a guy like Trey Alexander. This guy is, you know, letting him spread his wings. That's got to affect your writing, knowing that he's standing there, you know, you're keeping him in a cage. You know, when do you let him out? You know, how does that affect the writing?
There's a really cool way that I think we've massaged that is some of the stuff that he writes on guitar will be like odd meter, you know, very pretty much like what we're not trying to do. We want to keep it so that if you're my thing is like if you have to stop bobbing your head during the song, we're missing the target. Like you want people to feel it nonstop. And not everybody understands like virtuoso guitar because it's like watching a CPA do your taxes. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you don't understand it, but you're like, wow, you look like that's pretty impressive, you know? But
Yeah.
there's a reason why they go to college for it. And there's a reason why he played for so many years. So what we do is interesting and naturally happened is some of the guitar stuff that he writes, because we can't put all of it in, we will try to turn into synth parts.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
so like the opening of the Burnout is a synth part, but it was actually written by Trey on the guitar, and then we just pretty much programmed it into the synth.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. That works for sure.
Yeah.
You go into the studio for 4 days, you go in dry. You know, that's just, you know, unheard of, really. You know, there's a spontaneity to that.
Yes.
So that writing process, will you do that again? Is that, I mean, good things happened. Obviously, we got the result of it,
Yeah.
and they're very good. Do you do it again, or do you, you know, I mean, you did it out of kind of necessity this time. Would you, because of the product, would you do it again?
Yeah. So we've been in two separate times. The first time we either had to do that or, you know, just write as quickly as we could. So we did that. The second time we didn't have to do that. We had plenty of time to write.
Okay.
And with a little bit of pushback from the other guys, and I'm even though I'm in the same boat and thinking as they were, my thought process was, I mean, it's nervous. You're nervous going in, having to do that. But I feel like that is a way that, I mean, there are people that do it, but if you want to differentiate yourself, you have to find the low hanging fruit, you know, and that's one of them. And thankfully, you know, we have the chemistry naturally, and we were able to write things on the fly like that, and they came out pretty good. So in my opinion, the other guys will chime in as well because we make decisions together. I think we'll probably keep doing it. It's a positive creative risk to take. And if we don't do that, I mean, when you're writing and you have something, you think it's done, you wake up the next morning and you're like, wow, I'm glad I didn't publish that. I need to add something. And it just becomes, if you do that, it becomes a revolving cycle of just editing and compressing and compressing and compressing versus just going with your initial instinct. So I think that's a good thing, not even just in music, but they say your first instinct is, always the one you should really go with. And that's,
Right.
I think it's a good thing. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to continue.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I look at the band. You got James Wolpert, accomplished singer, yourself, accomplished drummer. You got Trey Alexander on guitar. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a three-piece. I don't hear bassist. What'd you guys do as far as bass?
Yeah. So actually Trey played bass.
Okay.
And yeah, so I mean, we'll probably end up getting a bassist. We've went back and forth about it. And the tough thing, a lot of people out there that have been in bands and that are in bands, along with yourself, Scott, I'm sure I understand. The more chefs in the kitchen, the more opportunity there is. Just like in traditional business, you have 4 people making decisions, it's probably a good idea if you can concentrate that into 2. So, I mean, 3 people, we get along really well and our personalities are much different, but they work. And I'm nervous in particular of bringing a 4th on. And you know how that is. I mean, it just could, you never know. I mean, you meet somebody in the first 2 weeks, they're really cool. And then they could still be a really good person, but not everybody's meant to work together. I've had experiences like that in the past, and I know we all have. So we might contract a bassist for shows or something, but bass is one of my favorite instruments. Yeah. So, I mean, I would love Victor Wooten's like my favorite musician of all time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my son is a bass player, so I get all of them in here. You know what I mean? Kind of studying it with him. Obviously I can't play anywhere close to what he can do, but it's just listening to the sounds and the different sounds of the bass guitar, and he plays stand up double bass too in orchestras. Okay. So I love that sound. I love that deep sound, however it comes, through a bow, through fingers, through a pick. It's a really interesting thing.
So you said you play bass?
No, my son is he has a teaching degree, and bass is his instrument. So
very nice.
Yeah. So being his father, I've got it. I basically went through school too.
You're not kidding either.
Yeah.
I totally get that. Have you read the book The Music Lesson by him?
No.
So I very much recommend reading that book. I'm not a reader, admittedly. I actually admire, my girlfriend is an avid reader, and I've always admired that. I just don't have the patience. But this book is the only book I've ever read in one setting in my entire life. And it's actually like the whole idea of writing from scratch and music as a language. And, personally, I'm not a fan of like traditional music theory. But Victor Wooten in that book lays out the theory of pretty much the heart of music and how anything is music. You're on a bus and you're riding in a bus. And, I read this book at like 12 years old and realizing like somebody beeping their horn is an accent.
Yes. I actually wrote an article for my local paper because they had a big construction thing in my neighborhood here, and I write an article column each month about music. So I said, and everybody was complaining about the construction. I said, if you listen to it as like an orchestra, it
sounds goofy though, but it's true.
Yeah, you go to a bar, the clanking of the glasses, it's music to me. And I guess that's a gift. Not everybody could do that. It doesn't bother me. The crying of my kids when they were younger, I found a certain harmony in it.
There's beauty in everything. And that sounds so like, such a weird thing to say. I don't even know how to categorize it, but it's so true. I mean, you listen to it and there is a beauty in everything. All sounds are music, and doesn't mean I like all sounds and everything,
Right.
but I mean, I used to get it's very odd as well. I used to have a voice memo on my phone, and I would record sounds that stuck out to me, and then I would go try to replicate them on the drums. And
Yeah.
that was one of the most difficult things to do. I do it on a cocktail jazz kit,
That's
and
cool.
that's it's interesting. But Trey actually gave me that book for my birthday one year. My dad used to mentor him, and I was probably 12 or 13, and Trey was like 23 or something.
Yeah.
But anyways, I recommend you read that book. It'll change your life. Man,
Wow,
it's pretty crazy.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's way cool. Way cool. This band very vested in mental health awareness.
Yes.
Hence the title, the Valerian root, said to be, very good for mental health and sleep and everything. How do you get that band name? Is that something near and dear to everyone in the band?
Yeah.
Mental health.
Yeah. So not to bring this up, but my brother took his life in 2013.
I'm sorry.
So that's actually something that I think a lot of people that go through experiences like that at a young age, they don't want to talk about it. I've always had an urge to talk about it with the people that need to hear the different elements of how to deal with things like this.
Yeah.
And going through that process and realizing that I think I could have probably benefited from the right outlets. And, I just think that a lot of music nowadays is, there's not a lot of it, but there's a lot of music out there in the mainstream that's about nothing. And I hate to say that because I enjoy even that stuff, but if you can add a purpose to it that's positive and really helps people, it just makes sense. We're not writing all of the music about one specific target like that, but yeah, I mean, we're really focused on mental health. It's a really important issue. I think it's always been around. It has to do with diet and different ways that you can have routines in the beginning of days. And like I go for a drive every morning, regardless, and it just clear my mind. And that's a way that I meditate. And I think that it's just getting back to the root of, your life, because we get so caught up in the rat race,
Yep.
and just being, like I always say, intentional, like just being intentional in an open book is something that we strive to be. And, we want to be a positive influence or a positive voice at the table.
That's great. We need that for sure. It's good to have a positive, something positive out there for sure. There's a lot of negativity in the world, that's for sure. You got James Wolpert, a singer, accomplished singer. And I look at the bands you were in, from Ashes to New, especially. It was very successful for you. Different, more of, I it's a, and I don't want to sound, like an old guy, but it has a newer, younger, more adolescent vocal sound for sure. It's a, give me back my crayons kind of sound, you know what I mean? Whereas, James is he has that accomplished, very mature sound.
Yes.
And did you ever worry that it might be too polished for what you wanted to do?
Yeah. Yeah, there were a lot of worries. It's so difficult to go into a studio the way we do and not overanalyze things, and pick things apart, which we did anyways. But when you put yourself in that situation, one positive of that situation, there are many, but is that, like I said, you have no choice. There's no time. You have to, take your first instinct and just do it, so Yeah, I mean, with James, like when we were trying to figure out what sound we wanted in the studio and stuff, we're going through, and it was the first time, admittedly, like James, myself, and Trey had never played together ever. We went in just on paper, we knew who each of us were, not that we're really anybody, but like just like Trey being virtuoso, and I haven't really been in music in a while, and James, same thing, but we've all had like a small amount of success, and we thought maybe compound that and work together. But James is really into like Jeff Buckley and like Queen. And I've heard him sing on like The Voice recordings and stuff. And the first question I had for him when we got in the studios, I was like, is your voice like, I don't want to sound this way. And I told him this, I was like, I don't want to sound this way, but is your voice the same voice, or did they do anything to it in the studio? And he was like, it's pretty dry, like when you're on the show. I mean, of course they mix it for TV and stuff like that.
Right.
But so he got into the booth the first time, and mind you, like, I don't think we had him sing in the booth at all the first day, or maybe even 2 days out of 4 days. So there was some anxiety, like, okay, well, the instrumentals sound good. I know James is going to sound great, but like you said, is it going to, like, how polished of a sound is he? What kind of voice does he add? Because that's really the icing on the cake,
Right. Right.
And it was incredible. So, I mean, I think it is polished for sure. And if what you mean by polished is kind of more old school, like kind of like Queen, and not as much like a modulated effects on rock and roll vocals.
Yeah.
Say, yeah, I think it is.
Well, but he's a singer. He's not a guy who sings. He's a singer. I mean, that's what he does. And I think that's the biggest difference is, you get guys who front bands, and they're powerful, they're gritty, but they're fronting a band. Brian Johnson of AC/DC, for example, not a great voice, but he's the guy you want, for the band for sure, and he's great.
He demands attention.
Yeah, but it's is he a singer, like a singer's singer? No, he's just not. James is. He's a trained singer. You can just tell his technique, the way he sounds is very, everything is intentional, and that is, I love hearing that, especially in a heavier band. It's just he controls that sound. He makes it his own, and that's a beautiful thing. It's obvious with this band that you embrace that, and that's I think it'll benefit the band down the road for sure.
It's James has said it's not a genre that he would have done on his own, which I think is beautiful, because same with Trey. I mean, he has his own, solo project, the Trey Alexander Band. They play like, like older, like Hendrix stuff and virtuoso, like jazz fusion, a lot of that. I really love that stuff. His band's one of my favorites. But I think that's a beautiful thing, to take somebody out of their shell. Even me, this is not typically, I came from more metal, double bass. I was trained growing up to play one pedal and more jazz and stuff, but double bass, metal. So this is not as heavy. This is not nearly as heavy as what I'm used to. And then with James, he's just kind of like go with the flow. But you're right, he's a singer's singer. Like he really focuses. He's very attention to detail, and so you put all of us together, and we come up with the common denominator of, what the average would be. And that's probably the coolest part to me, is like, we didn't know what it would sound like coming out at all. Not 1%. We knew rock and roll, and that's literally it. And when we were done, we're like, wow, so this is really the recipe to what the average of our 3 musical interests are,
It's cool. It's cool. Yeah, and I think that the origin in metal for you and for me too. I go as heavy as it goes. I think that helps with the going to the construction site, and if I can listen to Slayer's
Yeah,
Angel of Death, I can listen to my kids cry. You know what I mean?
you're not kidding.
It's not
Yeah,
that far off. So
thousand
there's
percent.
a tolerance for that for noise as music. Definitely. Uh, how much material have you done? What do you got in the can? How will you
Yeah.
release it? Will we get a full length record eventually?
Yeah. So we have what, two songs out right now and one music video.
Mhm.
We have three more songs that are completed, mixed and mastered, done, just sitting in the bank.
Nice.
Uh, we have another music video that's completed recently, just like got done with post production. We have we won Best New Band in Central Pennsylvania at the CPMA Awards at the Hershey Theater. And I actually had a camera guy follow us around. So we have that being turned into a vlog right
Yeah.
now.
Nice.
Today, we actually just released the second and final episode of the Studio Diaries. So we had somebody with the camera the whole time for that first time, the first 4 days. We have that all documented. So as far as music, 5 total songs, 2 are out right now. We're hoping to go back into the studio sometime, most likely in late June, early July. But we also we haven't played a show yet, so we're about to really ramp up rehearsals and get ready for that. And that'll be a big bear to tackle because we need to get a lighting engineer. We're gonna run this thing not like a band that just came out. We want to have a full light show, a graphics package, video boards, the whole thing. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's gonna be. We're getting to the fun part finally.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Obviously. How are we going to get the music you have? Are you going to wait on it? You going to hold it for a full length record, or will we get singles here and there?
Yeah, most likely it'll be portioned into singles. So we will be setting release schedules for these songs, myself and Jamie, over the next week or two. But yeah, I think we'd love to do a full length record, but the problem is we're independent currently. So we are funding everything. And, this stuff isn't cheap, as we all know, especially when you want to do it the right way, which is what we're trying to do. Like the high end studios and all of that it's not cheap. Yeah. So once we gain more funding and things like that, I mean, there's nothing more that we would love to do than do a 12-song package and put it out. And actually, you think of it with CDs back in the day, they're not really around anymore. And I think it would be interesting to figure out a way to make the music tangible. I used to love going and getting CDs and reading the pamphlets and buying it for one song and being, having blood in the game to listen to all 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm an old school guy. I remember running down to the record store, and popping open that record, having that big artwork and reading all the liner notes. It was an event.
Yeah.
And it took time and patience. To put that record on and actually listen to it, you had to go through a process. Now it's, push of a button, you don't like it, you push the next button, and that first person's gone. So yeah, I'm old school. I like the record. I like the ebb and flow of the record, the sequencing, all of that kind of stuff. But I also now I'm learning to appreciate the single because I get that song. I don't miss it. And you can miss it even when you listen to the whole record. In a 12 song record, you can gloss over something. So here you can't. You release the single. This is what you get. Listen to this over and over, one song or two songs, and you really can't miss anything. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But you're not gonna gloss over it. And so I do Yeah, I get that. I get the single. So
I
yeah,
love CDs, man, and records just like you.
yeah,
It's such a catch 22 because CDs and records were great, and I missed so many elements of, like you were saying, the experience, looking up when the record store opened and going there and hoping they had one, calling them, telling them to hold one,
right.
discovering music you haven't before. But the convenience with digital downloads and stuff is, you
Oh,
just can't beat it, and it'll never be beaten.
yeah,
And but they're both really cool. Like
yeah.
everything has value,
Yep. Yep. And I love seeing people who value music. Because it has cheapened a little with
Yeah.
digital. But putting some weight into what you do, and valuing what you do, and seeing it as something tangible is a great thing, man.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to the record, to more singles, to a video. The video was great. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Great song. Forward to more of that, and possibly a tour. I'm here in Chicago, so come see me, man. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll be there soon. We
yeah,
hope so.
yeah, that'd be
But we
great.
appreciate the support and we appreciate your time. At this stage, we need as much help from the community as we can get, especially being independent. So
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
keep putting the music out if the attention's there, and we love doing it. And the genuine feedback is always very much appreciated.
yeah. Well, you'll always get it, man. The door is always open. I love supporting young players, and newer bands, and it's what it's all about. I love the ambition from you guys, and the music's great. Uh, Best of luck to you, and like I say, my door is always open.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
All
Scott. I
right,
appreciate it, buddy.
all right. Have a good one, bud.
You too.
Take care.